And I received another phone call this week from Jonathan Greenblatt, the CEO of the Anti-Defamation League, whose voice has been so powerfully resonant over these last years as we have experienced a frightening spike in anti-Semitic rhetoric and violence. For 110 years, the ADL has been the world's leading anti-hate organization with a distinguished record of fighting anti-Semitism and advocating for just and fair treatment to all. Jonathan joined the ADL in 2015 after serving in the White House as Special Assistant to President Obama and Director of the Office of Social Innovation and Civic Participation, and that after a distinguished career in business. Under Jonathan's leadership, the ADL has modernized its operations, innovated its approaches to counter anti-Semitism from all sides, and enhanced its efforts to combat extremism in all forms. Jonathan's first book was published in 2022. It Could Happen Here: Why America is Tipping from Hate to the Unthinkable and How We Can Stop It, is a primer on how we as individuals, as organizations, and as a society can strike back against anti-Semitism and hate. Last Shabbat, we were privileged to hear from Ambassador Dennis Ross, whose expertise in the dynamics of the Middle East is without equal. Tonight, we are privileged to hear from Jonathan Greenblatt, whose expertise in the forces at work in this country galvanized by the dynamics of the Middle East is similarly without equal. Please join me in welcoming the ADL's Jonathan Greenblatt.
Shabbat Shalom. I'm deeply grateful that Rabbi Davidson invited me to be here with you tonight for this special Shabbat of unity and solidarity with Israel. And I'm equally humbled to be here with such esteemed guest clergy. And rather than name them all, I would just ask all of us again to thank them for joining us this evening. We've come together tonight as a congregation not only to pray together, but to be together in a house filled with hope, filled with light, and filled with love. And I would say that I think we need that love now. We need that love more than ever. We need it because we come together at a time when our hearts are scarred, heavy, broken. I know that for me, like probably for many of you, the past 2 weeks, they've been some of the hardest days of my life. We're all in pain. Mourning, our lapels torn, wondering what the future holds. It's an odd feeling because I think we find ourselves looking ahead toward a future that now seems almost unknowable, and yet life feels like it's been overtaken by a past that we actually know all too well. I think for everyone, the scenes that have unfolded since October the 7th have been horrifying, shocking, unmooring, and yet, I think in some corner of our Jewish souls, we know they're familiar. They hearken back to a previous time, to stories that I heard from my grandfather, many of you likely the same, or maybe from your great-grandparents, or other people in your life. We've all heard about Cossacks mauling Jews in the Pale of Settlement, or Nazis and Poles beating and burning Jews in broad daylight in the streets of Berlin or Warsaw, or neighbors suddenly seized by bloodlust, wildly murdering Jews in Baghdad or Shiraz. But all of this, it seems so far away. Hazy recollections, grainy black and white photos, pages of a history book, the stuff of museums. Except now it isn't. Like many of you, I have family, my wife and I have family in Israel right now, under siege, and others who've been deployed to the front lines. I have staff who can't locate their loved ones. I have friends who are gone, just gone. We learned last Shabbat that the body of my 14-year-old son's camp counselor, Ron Shermer, finally was identified. His name now one of the 1,400 murdered. And I've seen images that I'm never going to forget, of bodies burned beyond recognition, teenagers at a concert forever trapped in the burnt husk of their car. I've seen videos of people battered beyond what I thought possible. One that I will never unsee, a Thai man writhing semi-conscious on the floor, all while a crowd of Hamas terrorists surround him, try to behead him with a shovel. And then there are the hostages, 201, I suppose, as of today. And the sweet, sweet children literally held in the clutches of Hamas. The crying boy, maybe 8 or 9 years old, maybe you've seen the video, encircled by a group of jeering peers who laugh as they beat him and taunt him in a language this little boy doesn't understand. Another innocent child, maybe 4 or 5, sitting on a table, forced to say an Islamic prayer, "My masked captors," before he can drink a cup of water. And then there's this girl, this little girl, maybe 15, 16 months, too young to yet talk, mocked by her captors, grinning captors, who squeeze her face and ask her in Arabic where her parents are, knowing full well they had murdered them in the morning. I wake up at night haunted by these videos. I drift during the day or a service just like this, broken by these images. I am just shattered by these stories. Absolutely shattered. I think what we've witnessed is beyond words. It's beyond imagination. It's beyond. We literally don't have the language to describe what happened. I mean, think about it. The word genocide is a new construction coined in 1944 by an American Jewish lawyer to describe the extermination of the Armenian people at the hands of the Ottomans decades before. Scholars didn't have a broadly accepted term for the systematic annihilation of the 6 million until the word Holocaust was popularized in 1978 by a TV miniseries of the same name. You see, like in those cases, when they happened, we simply don't have the words. We don't have the words for the kind of evil that was practiced on the 7th at that scale, at that velocity, and with such rage. But that's what happened in the Jewish homeland 2 Saturdays ago tomorrow. This Shabbat, we read from Noach, the second parsha of the first book of the Torah. And here is a powerful story that has resonated over thousands of years. It has crossed cultures. And today, I think it resonates more than ever. We read about the flood and about how God brought upon the earth because of the corruption and wickedness in the world. And I think it felt like all of us, whether we were living in Eretz Yisrael or in diaspora, that we were overtaken by a flood on October the 7th. And in some ways, I don't know if we will ever fully recover. Life is different now. I think it's just different. But in the Parsha, God offers an opportunity to Noah, tells him how he can survive the coming deluge, instructs him with specificity on how to build an ark and how to welcome aboard 2 by 2 all of the flesh in which there is the spirit of life. And miraculously, after 150 days of the flood that covers the mountains, that engulfs the land, Noah survives with his sons, and they can rebuild. But what really stands out to me here is not that the Lord graced him with the information and with the instructions on how to survive the storm, but that Noah and his family did not wait for an ark to appear or for the supplies to materialize. They built the ark. Noah and his sons did the work. And so too must we now do the work. We need to do the work because, as we've seen in recent days, and as Rabbi Davidson alluded to, in our cities, on our campuses, in our newsrooms, on our WhatsApp chats, the world seems overrun with a degree of indifference or a kind of animus that seems like a flood. And so we must build an ark, not a physical ark. I think we have that in Medinat Yisrael. And make no mistake, the state of Israel will overcome and defeat Hamas once and for all. But what we need to do is to build a moral ark, an ark of values, an ark of truth. In the face of the sheer sadism, of the frothing viciousness that was unleashed on innocent people, men and women, boys and girls, elderly peace activists, retired social workers, babies and fetuses. In the face of that evil, we need an ark to lift us up above this moment, to shield us from the evil and wickedness that seems so pervasive. And I know, like Noah, we can make this choice and build it. I'll tell you, I've never seen our people so united. Never. Yes, there are some on the fringe in our community. There are those who would blame everything on Israel, those who would blame everything on our current president. But the vast majority of our Jewish community has lined up and stood together, arms locked, in support of our brothers and sisters in Sderot, in Be'eri, in Kiryat Arba, in Metula, all over the state of Israel. You see, we are our ark. And at the same time, even as we come together Over these last 2 weeks, many people have asked me, where are the other leaders? Where are our university presidents? Where are our communal partners? Where are our responsible journalists? What is going on? And perhaps this is the greatest failure, the one that troubles me the most. Because while I'm absolutely certain, as I said, that Israel will overcome, I'm not sure how to repair one failure. I mean, not the intelligence failure of the Shin Bet, that will be corrected. Not the military failure of the IDF, that will be fixed. But the moral failure of our supposed friends, the learned and progressive, right here in the West. To be clear, I'm not saying this is a universal condition. President Biden has been absolutely rock solid in his support of Israel. From his words to his actions to the extraordinary trip that he took this past week, amazing. And the vast majority of elected officials in this country have been outstanding. Democrats and Republicans, the federal, at the state, at the local level. And then there are groups like the National Action Network or the Asian American Foundation who also spoke up without hesitation. Celebrities like Bono or Madonna didn't dither. They showed compassion. They showed empathy. And I don't think anyone would describe any of these people as conservative per se. And yet, the collapse of the progressive sphere, it's not alarming. It's a catastrophe. A pathetic mentality of moral relativism has seized our media. It's captured our universities, and it seems to have overtaken so many pillars of our society. Even our most prestigious institutions seem incapable of calling out anti-Semitism with the same clarity, with the same conviction that they bring to nearly every other social issue, every conceivable grievance, every perceived microaggression. Instead, when Hamas issues a press release, a veritable blood libel accusing Israel of targeting a hospital and killing hundreds, they breathlessly report it without any regard for the truth. And then haltingly issue a correction, but don't even acknowledge the gravity of the error. And when Jews are maimed and murdered, they equivocate, they hesitate, they struggle to find the words. It isn't evil we hear from many quarters. It's understandable. It isn't wicked, they tell us. It's justified. It isn't rape, I have seen. It's resistance. And I worry deeply because it's obvious that this sickness won't be contained to the quad. It won't stay at the student center. It's a kind of moral degeneracy that's not going to remain on the op-ed pages of the Columbia Daily Spectator or the Washington Square News. Because these students graduate and they move on to the assignment desks of newsrooms, to the mailrooms of talent agencies, to the CSR desks of corporations, to the halls of Congress. But thankfully, there are hopeful signs. I would acknowledge right here tonight, this is hope. Hearing from our friends with conviction and love, that gives me hope. And then there are alumni from places like Harvard and the University of Pennsylvania who are holding the administrations accountable. Thank God for alumni like Mark Rowan and Bill Ackman, John Huntsman and Ken Griffin. And these are Jews and non-Jews making this push. Or firms like Winston and Strawn who are reminding students that they're going to pay a price for prejudice. or companies like Adidas and Apollo, Google and Omnicom, the NBA and others, they've joined ADL's Workplace Pledge to show the world they'll stand with their Jewish employees and their Jewish customers. And these might be isolated examples right now, but I think they're incredibly important ones because on many levels they illustrate not just what they can do, but what you can do. Each and every one of you, as alumni, as donors, as employees, as executives, as people with agency, they create momentum that we can model. Something we can build from to save not just our people, but society from itself, because we know this as Jews. Anti-Semitism may start with the Jews, but as Deborah Lipstadt says, it never ends with the Jews. So this isn't just our fight, it's everyone's fight. Now, it will take time to reverse this trend. It's not going to happen overnight. And it will take work, real work, to remediate the sort of moral mold that's contaminated these institutions. But this task, the task in front of us, it pales compared to what our brothers and sisters in Israel are facing right now. But make no mistake, if you leave with one thought tonight, know that this task, our task, is just as existential. We can't afford to take our lives here in America for granted, like my grandfather did growing up in Magdeburg, Germany, like my wife's family did growing up in Tehran, Iran. Because if it could happen in Ophir, if it could happen at Kibbutz Be'eri, it could happen here. And if you don't think so, if you're listening to me tonight and you think that's over there, you're kidding yourselves. Yesterday, 2 weeks ago, you had an excuse. Today, we have none. So does that mean if you're a progressive, you give up on your identity? If that's how you identify? Far from it. It's not what I mean. Don't misinterpret me. This isn't a validation of one side of the sort of endless political ping pong game that seems to dominate our country. It's not a game where you give up for one team and go play for the other. You need to fight with the same ferocity for your ideas and for your identities as our brothers and sisters in the IDF fight for their lives. So what does that mean? It means you go to a major news network and you call them out on the air. Or you write a letter and you tell them how you feel. It means you talk to the weak Ivy League president and you don't accept a half-loaf, mealy-mouthed answer. Or you close your checkbook and you show them that you're not going to support their indifference. And you ask the companies, your companies, the ones you own, the places where you work, that you expect them to stand up for decency. And you reach out to your lawmakers and you demand they support nonprofit security grants to keep synagogues like this safe. This is what we do at ADL, and as the rabbi said, we've been doing it for 110 years. We work tirelessly, relentlessly, every day to fight anti-Semitism at every turn. And I can tell you over the last 2 weeks, we've been mobilized like no time in memory. We're monitoring extremists and tracking acts of anti-Jewish hate. And the numbers are alarming. Over the past 2 weeks alone, we've seen a 380% increase over the number of incidents that were reported this time last year. And keep in mind that we were already dealing with the highest numbers of anti-Semitic acts the ADL has ever seen in almost 45 years of tracking this information. We've seen synagogues in Europe firebombed, another looted and torched yesterday in Tunisia. We've seen apartment buildings in Germany with Jewish stars scrawled on the outside where they have large numbers of Jewish residents. Today, there were riots in London and in Germany. In Australia, at Sydney, at a large demonstration in front of the Opera House, they yelled, "Gas the Jews." So I worry. I worry as we watch events unfold in Gaza that this trend will not subside anytime soon. That's why we work with partner organizations and law enforcement to keep our communities safe. And let me tell you about law enforcement. We have no better partners in the country than the NYPD who keep us safe. And we're in touch with leaders from the White House to 10 Downing, governors and mayors, executives from Wall Street to Silicon Valley, to ensure they all do our part to protect our people. And even though we're busy responding and reacting, we're constantly doing our ways to stop hate from manifesting in the first place, to remind our children of right versus wrong. And maybe that's a lesson we need to relearn ourselves. So in closing, let me just say, this is a reminder never to be silent in the face of evil, never to stand down in the face of hate, never to be quiet when confronted by anti-Semitism. Never again. Never is now. Again, in Noach, that we'll read tomorrow, it's a time of choice. The choice of Noah was the beginning of rebuilding a world in the aftermath of destruction, with a hope that a more stable and peaceful order could emerge. So tonight, in this dark time, I hope we can make a choice. We can build our moral ark and fill the world with our knowledge of good, fill the world with light, and replenish the stocks of hope that seem so depleted, so that together we can fight the darkness in the days to come. Am Yisrael Chai, Am Yisrael Chai, Am Yisrael Chai. Shabbat Shalom. Thank you.